You just know he's not here, so you just say, not here. So you check your boxes.
Doesn't make sense.
Oh, I get such a headache when these start again. I think I'm getting hungry. Because that thing cut into my food time. They are, but when I get skinny.
Can I have your attention? We'll go ahead and get started. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I know you do, and I did, I'll send them to you tomorrow, but it's the stuff it's online. It's appendix, B.
Gotcha.
That's the sponge dot one, but I need to give you more stuff. I need to provide you another ordinance, because that's the one that has the crazy ordinance that I found after the fact
Gotcha.
that never got combined, so
I don't
there's,
see my gavel here.
it's like half of what needs to be in there is in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening. This is December 21, 2015, meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board for the City of Tarpon Springs. My name is Bill Vincent. I'm the chairman tonight. And today is also the winter solstice, so it's the longest night of the year, but that doesn't mean we can
We're not staying that long, right?
speak at will at length, but we'll try to keep our comments and questions relevant to the evidence and issues before us. We'll start with the roll call.
Chairman Vincent,
Here.
Mr. Carr, Mr. Parker,
Here.
Ms. St. Arnold,
Here.
Mr. Seaman,
Here.
Mr. Haas,
Here.
Ms. Protos.
Here.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the November 16, 2015 meeting of the board.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as they stand.
Second,
Motion and second. Any comments or questions?
yes.
All in favor? Well, we'll take the roll call. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh,
I just
oh,
want to
I'm
make a
sorry.
statement. Questions that I asked last board meeting, they skirted around the question and never really answered the question I was asking. There's two areas in here, so,
Well, did they answer it at the meeting?
nope, they
Okay.
skirted around it.
Well,
I
does the
just want
meeting-
to say that they didn't answer it, and I have written letters to Tallahassee.
Did the minutes fairly reflect what happened at the meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That they didn't answer properly, but I just want that known and in the minutes.
Well, I don't think it's the job of the minutes to make characterizations, but to just reflect what happened. And if it fairly reflects that they didn't answer your question, then that would show up if someone reads the minutes.
Well, that's the developer's way of doing things.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we take a vote? Roll call, please.
Ms. Protos,
Yes.
Mr. Haas,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman,
Yes.
Ms. St. Arnold,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Mr. Carr,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent, Chairman
I
Vincent.
wasn't here, but I did view the video of the meeting, and so I'll vote yes.
Okay.
Okay. Next item on the agenda will be the quasi-judicial announcement and swearing in of speakers by our attorney, Mr. Daniel.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, in the interest of time, and seeing as we have a single applicant who I know to be familiar with the quasi-judicial process, if it's okay with you, I'll dispense with the full announcement and swear in our witnesses and,
I think that's fine. Mr. Stamus has been before lots of boards. and
Yes, he
he's
has.
very familiar with the administrative procedure.
if I could ask those who plan to testify tonight to please stand and be sworn. Do you swear from the testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I'll ask the board at this juncture if there are any ex parte communications on this application. Seeing none, are there conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Thank you very much. The item on the agenda that comes now is item number 4, application number 15-107, resolution 15-46, site plan review for the Stamus Family Partnership regarding expansion of the existing boat storage facility, Phase 2. And we'll begin with the staff report.
Thank you. Heather Earler for the staff. This property is located on West Pappas Road, north of the North Spring Boulevard. It's approximately 1.82 acres, and it's zoned, its land use is industrial general, and its zoning district is Waterfront Marine Industry Development District 2, which essentially allows for this type of water-dependent use. Boat storage is considered water-dependent, and therefore it is allowed in the zoning. With that, I'd like to draw your attention to the site plan that is attached, and I'm going to go through the particulars of what's been included by the applicant at this particular point in time. This, it's fair to mention that this application actually includes 2 right-of-ways that were actually vacated prior to my arrival here, so I wasn't part of that application. I can't give you too much particulars on it, but if you do have questions, I'll try to answer those questions. And with that, what the applicant is asking for is, there's proposed boat storage area, and he's asking for a couple of different sizes of spaces. He's asking for 8 spaces at 14 by 50 and 73 spaces at 12 by 35 feet. And essentially what's going to happen here is these boats are actually going to be stored on trailers. This is an on-grade, how you see these individual lots laid out. This is all on-grade. This is not an elevated storage unit of any kind. It's basically boat storage on an existing piece of property with the individual spaces clearly marked out here and delineated on the plan. Again, the property that is currently accessed will be, this expansion will actually be accessed through the existing boatyard and yacht facility. There is a large black arrow that shows where that indicates where the access point will actually be, and circulation will be internal to that property. There will be no additional access points for ready access. The 2 access points that are actually shown with rolled gates here are for emergency access only. So they're only going to be for vehicles when they have Knox boxes on those which is a type of controlled entry piece where you would actually enter only with a siren, okay? So that being the case, this is not going to access off the road on additional things on a daily basis. It's only going to be when there is an emergency out there that they actually need to get into that property and service that property. That being the case, the access and driveways internal to the project have been composed of a compact shell base, which should support the movement of emergency vehicles. And this was heard at TRC, and the fire marshal has approved this particular design and this particular compacted surface for the fire engine to be able to move on this site. The rest of the surface is going to be covered in about 3 inches of mulch. And there's going to be a proposed berm, which is actually not required by code, which is why I want to kind of draw your attention. That's actually going to be pushed against the bayou to prevent any fluid and or mulch or anything moving across the site, if it does move with water or that type of thing, from going in directly into the bayou. So this is actually a really good design, and I'd like to compliment the applicant for doing something like that, because that's something that our code doesn't necessarily require, but is in this particular case is an extra added bonus, being that you're going to have fuel in these boats, stored in these boats when they're moving from one side of the boatyard to another, and there is a potential for spills or that type of thing, and we obviously don't want that moving into the bayou if we can prevent it. So this is a very good design to help prevent for that and actually provide for extra protection for that type of condition. Essentially, the boat storage facility and any water-dependent uses are exempt from shoreline buffers, so the fact that they're actually providing that berm is essentially meeting or exceeding what's required by our code for that particular item. The applicant has provided a letter from a certified arborist identifying the trees and the conditions of the trees. Approximately 76 trees, or a total of 1,181 inches of trees, will be removed. However, one of the trees on the inventory is an invasive species, which doesn't require permitting to be removed, and you have another 929 inches that will need to be mitigated by the applicant, because there's several of the trees on this inventory that are diseased or have outlived their livelihood at this point, and they're ready to be removed, and they don't require permitting to remove those diseased trees or trees that are damaged for any reason. That being the case, they will have to mitigate at the time of permitting, and they'll have to tell us what they want to do, whether they're going to make a donation into the tree fund, whether they're going to put additional trees on the site. Right now, what they're actually proposing is an 8-foot wide landscaping buffer, which includes 15 cedars at 4-inch DBH and 70 viburnums at 3 gallons. That's sufficient to meet the landscaping buffer requirement. However, the applicant still is going to have to mitigate 869 inches of trees, and they will tell us how they're going to do that at the time of permitting. It will be one of 3 options. They'll have to find additional areas, and there are areas on this property that he could clearly put mitigation trees on if he chooses to. He can also do an off-site planting on one of his other properties. That's something that the city has accepted in the past, and or pay into or provide a donation into the city's tree bank. So he will have to tell us how he's doing that at the time of permitting, but clearly he can provide. There is an avenue for him to provide for that mitigation. So staff is not concerned, but there is a condition addressing trees in this application. And with that, there is no requirement for this there's no site plan or requirement for the zoning change or a comprehensive plan amendment. The technical review team determined that the application for site plan review was complete and compliant with the land development code and with the comprehensive plan. The future land use is consistent here with the proposed use. All of the concurrency criteria are met for those areas that actually need to be met. Again, this is not there's no issue near for traffic or transportation-related concurrency here. It's on a local roadway. It's not a failing roadway, so they've met that criteria. It's also, they are a de minimis impact because this is really an expansion of an existing use that's already out in this area. So that being the case, they've met the criteria for concurrency, and the project meets all the required city building codes, and will have to submit to prove that at the time of permitting with construction drawings. And with that, staff recommends approval that the application is consistent with the review criteria and therefore with the following conditions. The applicant must mitigate for tree removal at the time of permitting pursuant to LDC section 133.06. Construction plans shall be consistent with the approved site plan. The payment of all requisite fees attendant to the project shall be paid in the payment or in accordance with the land development code. And the site plan shall expire within 1 year of the effective date unless the application has been filed for a building permit with construction plans signed and sealed by a Florida registered engineer licensed in the state of Florida. With that, I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Orweiler. Any questions for staff at this time from the board?
I assume the necessary parking for this number of boats is accommodated on the paved areas of the existing site?
That is correct.
Can you clarify that a little bit more? Because there's a lot of boat parking, but it doesn't look like there's a lot of vehicle parking involved. So what's actually required behind like a boat yard with a large amount of boats? Because if we have for instance, a 4th of July, Labor Day weekend, you're in a residential area, you're going to have people parking along the roads, and it's already a limited parking spot already. So I don't really know what the code is for that. I don't know if
It's actually the industrial parking rate is what you use specifically for this type of use, being that it's an industrial use. And so many of the boats that will be stored on this facility will already they'll be staying at the facility. However, you will have traffic coming to that facility, and that traffic has been accommodated for and counted for on the existing site.
Yeah, but if you have 70 boats and you have half of them out at the same time, it's 35 trucks out there. So where are all the trucks going to park in that aspect?
Is there a launch pad?
They're
not launched here, are they?
We can allow, yeah, they're launched here. There is on the other site, on the adjacent site, there is a boat launch.
So, he's not required, or the applicant's not required to have a specific amount of parking for.
That is
vehicles
correct.
in an industrial area.
They are.
Excuse me, if I'm not mistaken, there is a parking lot across from all that, so there's plenty of parking.
For a couple boats, or a
Excuse
couple
me?
trucks maybe, but
No, there's a big parking
No,
lot
there's
across
a
from
huge
that.
parking lot.
I've parked there before. I understand there's a parking lot there. I'm just trying to ask a question.
We
Based
can-
on how many parking spots, if it's required as a code for an industrial area, is it required to have an X amount of parking spots? I'm not trying to be conflicting in any way. I'm just trying to address something that's going to cause an issue in a residential area at some point. So, don't mean to stir this up a little more.
No, that's okay. Can I answer? Okay. Then Essentially, there is a requirement for parking, okay? The applicant can speak to this. He can talk to you about exactly what the number of parking spaces that he has out there for the existing facility. There is sufficient parking at the existing facility and the adjacent parking area that he has to accommodate the additional traffic. It is not required that each parking space here has a corresponding parking space for a truck. It's basically a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every 5 spaces that you have, you would need roughly an additional parking space. But that's going to be balanced out for the whole site, for the entire site, not just for this particular thing, but for the larger site. So the applicant can speak to that.
Okay, thanks for answering.
You're very welcome.
Any other questions of staff at this time? Okay, it's time then, we'll hear from the applicant. Mr. Davis? I think the podium's back there in this room, the configuration is.
Yeah, George Stamus, representing Stamus Family Partnership. I think, as has been discussed, this is an expansion of an existing facility. Currently, we have about 50 boat storage spaces in our existing site, some 45 to 50 depending on the size of the boats that are in there. As far as the parking goes, typically, you know, people do one of two things. They either leave their vehicle hooked to the trailer, go out and boat and come back, or we have about a 70 or 80 space parking lot right across the street from the boat launch facility, right where you come into it, right, a paved parking lot, or they park there. Some people take their trailer and their vehicle out there and park it on the parking lot, so they don't have to re-hook up to their trailer at the end. They leave it hooked up and parked on the paved parking lot, and then come back and they're already connected to their trailer. So there's a number of ways that they do it, but we have had no problem with with parking, and we won't have with this number of additional spaces. It's funny, you know, you think, you know, you got 100 spaces or whatever it's going to be, 125. You'd think, oh, well, if half the people come and use their boats in the busiest times, and these are like Labor Day and the big holidays and everything, it would be really maxed out if 25% of the people are out. So it's not, and then on a typical day, out of the ones that are there, maybe there's 3 or 4 cars at a time there, 3 or 4 people using their boats, and on the weekend, maybe 6 or 8. It's amazing. But a lot of people just use it for storage, and they don't come in and out all the time, and then other people use theirs more often. But as far as parking goes, we have plenty there to support this. We have a waiting list of about 30 people waiting to get in right now that we've had almost since the beginning, so this is needed. When we proposed this originally to the city, one of the I guess pitches, if you will, to allow it was that we're taking boats off the roadway that normally would be coming and using the city launching facilities, and trying to find parking over there at the little facility that we have over by the park is like, you know, there's places to park like 5 cars there, and there's cars parked all over the streets there. Well, a lot of those people are parking at our place now and keeping their boats there, and they're not having to travel across the road with their boat, launch it, find a place, and come back. It's all self-contained. So I think it's a good service for the city, and it's worked very well. And I'll entertain any other questions that you might have at this point.
Thank you.
I have a question. Go ahead. You're not adding any more ramp space, you're already.
No.
But I see that there's a fence that's gonna block the 2 sections, I guess?
Well, there's an existing fence,
Correct.
and we're going to cut an opening in there so that you can pass between the lots. So everybody will continue to come in the gate with the entry code keypad on it. And they'll come in and they'll either go into the existing lot or into the new lot through the opening. So there'll be no.
I can tell you, I live on Shattuck and Lemon Street, and it gets really nasty on the weekends with the boaters and parking the trailers, and
Yeah.
and so it, you know, that would be a welcome relief.
Thank you. Anything else?
other questions from the board for the applicant? I have a question. A few years ago, I guess after you started the first storage unit, I'd heard some comments about the bright floodlights outside, shining across the water into residences that are across there.
Right.
And some complaints. And I don't know if that's still going on, if that's been ameliorated at all. But that's a concern I have, just about the only concern I have from the site plan is that I think it'd be good to shield the floodlights so that the light doesn't go off the property. I know
Right.
you want to keep it lit for security reasons and so people can see the boats and all that, but, those are bright lights on a big industrial area, and it can be harsh if it's not shielded from neighboring
Right.
sites. Do you have any plans, or do you have any objections to, and I don't see any shield or any lights on the site plan, but I'm sure that you would have some plans for having outdoor lighting in this facility for the boats and for security, but,
You have some lights for security now, don't you?
We do.
I live on Chesapeake.
Yes.
And those lights go right in my bedroom. Not maybe yours, but those lights right across from, go right in my bedroom, and they're just fierce. So it'd be
Okay.
really nice if some of them were shielded. I mean, yours, but the other people, I wish there'd be some way that they would shield theirs as well.
Right. Well, when we first did the first storage facility, we put lights there because we have a ramp there that people can use at nighttime, and we wanted to make sure that it was properly lit for people to use it and not be trying to run around in the dark there.
Understood.
So we put the lights in. We had a photometric study done. It shows that the light doesn't really travel off the, but you know how lights are, light travels, so we've had complaints, and every time we knew who the complainant was and where they were, we tried to shield it, readjust the lights, put a shield on it. The complaints have pretty much gone away, except for yours now. So I'd be happy to, what I'm saying is if we know
I'm
about,
not one to come and
but we
really
want
complain,
to
but-
know, because there's
but-
things we can do about
But
it,
it
so.
would be, and I don't know if it's yours, I live behind Rusty Bellies, directly across from Rusty Bellies on Chesapeake.
Yeah,
So,
so if we know where you're having the problem, then we'll try and do something
and it
about the ones that.
probably is not you, it's probably whoever's
Well, it
next
could
door.
be, because they're
But-
bright, they're bright. Now, I talked to Heather about this. If we do light that section, which we probably will, we're happy to agree to put shielding on the lights to direct it down towards the parking lot and try and keep fugitive light from leaving the site. I mean, it's, light's one of those things that's difficult to get every bit of it, but, with shielding, you can get the majority of it.
So staff would recommend a condition based on this concern that basically would state any lighting is to be shielded and directed internal to the site. That would satisfy that. Forcing a photometric study without having any lighting provisions in your code is kind of problematic. Asking the applicant to provide shielded lighting and direct it internal to your property is probably not that much of a stretch of the imagination. Obviously, he doesn't want to pay for electricity that's escaping his site anyway. And being that this particular site isn't going to be where the boat ramp is, it will probably be easier for him to contain light here versus where the water is, because there wouldn't be the same need that there is on the other site for, lights by the water. Because what also happens with light is it reflects off the water and refracts in all different things every time the water shifts. So it becomes its own, he becomes his own enemy by trying to mess with the lights. It affects other people, so.
And I know you have to have that, that's for your protection, and that's for safety, and that's just because you don't want people to steal anything from you.
Yeah.
I got that, but it would
Well-
just be,
yeah, it's important, but it's also, being that Tarpon Springs has so much waterfront, and we have a lot of boat traffic throughout the city because of all the waterfront we have, and we're blessed with. If you're on the water at nighttime piloting a boat, the bright lights make it hard for you to see what's going on.
Sure.
And so shielding is very important for safety for the boaters as well, as drivers, going over the bridge at the yacht club, for instance, a glare from the light can sort of
Blind you.
blind you to a pedestrian or someone on a bicycle or something like that. So it's important, I think, to shield as much as we can the light to the site itself. And, but yeah, at the ramp, it probably bounces off and goes
Sure.
on. And it may be a little trickier, you know, in your existing facility, closer to the ramp. But we, you know, are concerned about the safety of the boaters as well as the bicyclists and pedestrians on the bridge and the people driving around. But, so at least on the existing site, I'd like to see it shielded to be contained within the site. And I'm sure that's not too hard to figure out how to do, you know.
On
Stan
this,
knows about that stuff.
on this site, we can put a condition on it. On the existing site, that's not something that we can control because that's not here for
I
the discussion.
understand that's not in the jurisdiction for tonight.
I just want to make sure we're all
Mr.
clear with that.
Mr. Stamus has heard our concerns, and I'm sure he's going to take a look at it anyway. He's a good citizen.
I just got can I get clarification on something? Are you gonna irrigate the cedars and viburnums at all on the south side, or is it just gonna be kind of natural? Because that's a,
Probably gonna be natural.
okay. I think it would be wise for the city to have some type of plan on how to, I guess code enforcement's already stretched out, but I mean, when we do that, you have a typical loss of plants over a period of time due to drought and so on. So along those lines, I'm not really sure what our code says for irrigation, but I understand it's a industrial area. So my next comment would be is if it would, I think, address Mr. Vincent's point of the lights, but also on the residential side and the street side. If you put some type of buffer between the road and your property, similar to how you're doing the south side against the yacht club, it would probably be beneficial to help some light pollution coming across in the neighbors' yards and stuff. If it's palm trees or other cedars or whatever it may be. Because it's a really pretty lot, but obviously it's yours and it's your property right to do what it's within the code. So that's just something from being a resident and obviously on the board that could help the area in the neighborhood area. So
We're gonna have quite a few trees to either replant or donate to the city fund, or, so we're probably gonna come up with some fringe lands. Trees and boats don't get along real good, you know, the kind that drop leaves, but palm trees and cedars and things that are evergreen like that can work out. So we'll probably come up with a plan to add some to the lot as well, in areas where it would enhance it and maybe be a buffer as well. We won't call it a formal buffer, but I understand what you're saying.
Any other questions of the applicant or the board? Thank you, Mr. Stamus. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain any questions from the public who may be here. Or, I see none.
You're the public.
Okay, the public portion of the meeting is closed. Now the board will, is open for comments from the board members.
I think it's a great asset for our community.
And every site plan that that they have ever brought forth to the city has always been very good, and they'll do what they say they're gonna do and go above and beyond. We'll see.
You're looking for a motion?
Yes, we're open for a motion.
Okay.
Before we motion, I just want to make one comment. Are we planning on putting an additional fourth condition to deal with the shielding of the lighting? Well, what's the purview of the board? Because if they are, I can read those conditions back into the thing, and then you can make them into your motion, because you'd have a full set of conditions.
That was
I
staff
think-
recommendation.
I think that's, it sounds like the consensus is,
Okay, so why don't I read the full set of 4 conditions into the record so that you can motion.
Okay.
The applicant must mitigate for tree removal at the time of permitting pursuant to LDC Section 133.06. Construction plans shall be consistent with the approved site plan. The payment of all requisite fees attendant to the project shall be paid in accordance with the Land Development Code. The site plan shall expire within 1 year of the effective date unless the application has been filed for a building permit with construction plans signed and sealed by a registered engineer licensed in the state of Florida. And then finally, any lighting to be installed on the site shall be shielded and directed internal to the site.
that'd be exterior lighting? Of course, I don't think there's any buildings here, so it's
Yeah.
probably all external, but
Yeah.
in case you were to put up a little building.
I'll make a motion that we accept application 15-107 with the staff recommendations 1 through 4.
Second.
Motion by Ms. St. Arnold and second by Mr. Carr. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Protos?
Yes.
Mr. Haas?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes.
Ms. St. Arnold?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Carr?
Yes.
Chairman Vincent?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
Thank you all, and hope everyone has a Merry Christmas.
Chief,
Thank
you-
you.
This used to be my homeroom when I was in junior high. You probably know that, right?
I remember this room, Mr. Temple was here when I was, science class was here.
And it used to be Mr. Stroby's, class, and this is where George Rosen grew up
And only a few things went outside these windows, these big windows here, It wasn't air conditioned back
And
then.
they're off the covers where everybody used to get the paddle. That was- who's,
It still is where everybody gets the paddle.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks.
And George was a model student, made straight A's.
Okay.
Wow,
let's
this
see.
is like serious paper. I ripped it.
Next item on the agenda is number 5, staff comments. Heather?
Yeah, really what I had was I included in your packets, I think Anita, you should have got a copy of this in your packet too, okay? This basically is the public hearing schedule for next year. Your meetings are on here. Any of the board meetings are on here as well. Actually, the board meetings aren't on this, but if you want a copy of the board schedule as well, I can send that out to you because they were kind enough to put that on the bottom of our agenda or our schedule this year so that you're aware of those meetings as well, just in case you had ever wanted to attend. And then the other thing I have is just if we need to, I would like to get a list of revised emails if anybody has a new email or that type of thing. So I'm going to send around a list of just emails. If you could just provide any changes to your emails so that we make sure we keep the list current.
If not, we just don't need to put anything.
Correct. I just need it if there's been a change.
You're getting your packets, then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so be sure, board members, if you're not getting the emails about the packets and all that, set them straight with the correct email address, please. Oh, this sheet going around is for any changes or corrections. All right, any other comments from staff?
That's all that I have.
Danielle,
Thank you.
anything?
Merry Christmas.
All right, next item on the agenda is board comments.
Merry Christmas to everyone, and may we have a successful year next year, and everyone have good health.
I have a question.
All right.
Can we be on multiple boards?
No.
I don't believe so. I
Can
think,
we be on only one?
I think the charter says you can only be on one board.
You can be on committees that last less than 1 year in duration. Ad hoc committees, for example, pop up from time to time. You could be on those and serve on this board as well, but you can't serve on 2 perpetual boards.
2 appointed boards, right?
Good point, yeah.
Okay.
On the Heritage Board, I don't know how that one stands. I don't know, the Heritage Board is seen, considered,
Yeah, you couldn't serve on this board and the Heritage Preservation
Well,
Board.
you can't leave
Yeah.
this board without permission from the rest of us anyway, so.
I like this
well,
group. They have to have permission to leave. I like it.
Okay, any other comments? I'll have one, and it deals with the lighting situation that came up tonight. And I spoke with Heather about it, since she's new, and some of you are new on the board too. But this board did bring up the issue of wanting the city to adopt an ordinance regulating exterior lighting, to try to cut down on the light pollution and the offensive lighting that goes on the neighbor's property and adjoining properties and that sort of thing. And such an ordinance hasn't been adopted yet, and it's been a couple of years since we brought that up, and I know some work was done on it, but I don't know where it got stalled, and so I've asked Heather to look into seeing where that is, so that maybe we can go forward and have an ordinance that would actually, when there's developments, they would be required to shield the lighting from the neighbor's property. And those who've had lights coming in from
think it
neighbor's
was
property
Rodney.
know what I mean.
I think
That
Rodney
it's
was
not a
working
nice
on
thing.
it. I gotta go
And,
through his personal
And
files.
plus, it's a danger to vehicle traffic, you know, when they're driving by a business and there's bright lights, whether it's a lit sign, that sometimes they're so bright. And sometimes, like on an Anklet Road, it's not your facility, it's down and around the corner there, there's another boat, marina or something, and there's a light that's close to the road, and you're going west on Anklet Road, and it just about blinds you
Yeah.
as you're heading towards Savannah Avenue.
But if you got an order, if I make a comment?
Go ahead, Michael.
The reason I'm bringing this, Mark and I, our expertise is in lighting. And just as an addition to what you're speaking about, a lot of it has to do with how the instrument itself is focused. Sometimes if it's what's called a downlight, the beam just goes down this way.
Right.
Now, a lot of times they try to make more of that same one light, rather than have several lights that cover an even area, they'll tilt that light up. And that's where a lot of that incidental light comes in.
Exactly.
Both of us are, lighting designers as
That's
well,
right.
so, I just wanted to throw that in. I know we're gonna be out of order though when I mentioned that to you.
I appreciate the comment, and the proposed ordinance, well, the one we looked at, or we had the staff look at, is a proposed model ordinance from the International Dark Sky Association, which has a very comprehensive model ordinance. And of course, it would need to be adapted for each city that wanted to adopt it, but it does deal with all the various angles and that sort of thing. It's a very comprehensive ordinance, and you can see that online if you want to take a look at it. And Heather's familiar with that as well.
I thought it might be helpful to you to mention that.
Thank
If
you.
a light is blinding on the road such as you spoke about, does code enforcement have any jurisdiction over that?
They probably would. I think it might fall into the category of a public nuisance, depending upon its intrusiveness and if it's causing a public safety issue. I think it probably could be enforced through
It'd be harder, but they could.
through an ordinance, not specific to lighting, but some other
Blinding on the
catch-all.
road, that's not cataracts, so
Yeah.
maybe code
Yeah.
enforcement needs.
Well, a lot of times it's easier to have something that they can look at and enforce that's not in a gray area. Something like nuisance is sort of a gray area.
Yeah, you're trying to square it in, get it shoehorned into some ordinance that might be
Right.
violative,
Right.
but it's not as clear as.
Safety factor, that's all.
Other than that, I'd like to remind the citizens that around the bayou on Christmas Eve, if the weather's permitting, it's going to be a very beautiful annual event for 30 years. The Sunset Hills Elementary School has, as a fundraiser, put the land baths, so the candles around the bayou, and a lot of people show up and walk around there because those who purchase can say in memory of or in honor of, and so there's hundreds, I don't know how many people walking around, very quiet, and it's very hushed, very beautiful evening, and so we hope you take advantage of that.
One of my favorite times, I live right there, so
It
it's
is.
beautiful to see all those around.
It is nice. A lot of families walk around there very quiet and whisper. I mean, they're not required to, but it's just a very hushed thing, and it's just a very moving experience. So if you haven't been there, check it out, and have a very safe holiday season, and see you all in January. Any other comments?
Well,
Were you
one
gonna say-
other,
Okay.
you mentioned how that got kind of lost, your idea about the lighting. Sounds like Jacob's and my idea about all the imported rocks around the bayou that keeps getting dropped. So
I brought that
I'd
up.
like to see something with that.
I brought that up at the city commission meeting this past week, and I talked to the city manager, and he said he's gonna get some staff together after the first of the year and talk about what other options maybe we could look at
Keep going.
to fix the situation.
Yeah.
So what's available out there. So.
Well, we have an attorney
Concrete.
on board, and I'm gonna give you a phone number before you leave.
Okay.
Bill, years ago, there was a gentleman, that gave deeds to those property owners. It has to be researched. I call it a deed. I'm going to call the person that told me about it, get more information and give the name to, Jacob. And I think there was restrictions of some sort, and I think the rocks may not be legal there. But we need to research that. So I'm gonna give you that gentleman's name and let's call him
Okay.
and get that information.
Thank you, Ms. Produce.
But I figured you know about it, because you're a history buff here too.
I'm a little bit of a history buff. It just comes natural with age. But,
Well, are you sorry I'm old?
but no, I'm not aware of the deeds.
Sorry, I babysat this house years ago.
No, I'm not aware of those deeds, but I'd like to see them if Jacob can find them. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board or staff? Meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
7:40.